The world is not falling apart, but the US and Europe are having a tantrum. That's different. And the world is not fragmenting. The US is isolating itself. It doesn't even go to the parties anymore. It puts on tariffs. It says, you can't have our market. And the rest of the world says, okay, because your market's not so important for us. And Trump said, okay, we're going to punish you, China, for being so successful, by the way. We're going to put 100% tariff on you. And the next hour, China said, okay, we're putting 120% tariff on you. And then Trump said, okay, we're going to restrict any advanced chips going to you. And China said, okay, no rare earth magnets. And the US, within a half an hour, said, we surrender. By the way, I had no idea there was anything called a rare earth magnet before all of this happened. So I had to ask ChatGPT what it was exactly. It turns out it's absolutely essential for all manufacturing, for automotive, for military, and so on. And China makes them. The US doesn't make them. And so turned out the US learned a bit of a lesson there. Again, yet another reason why Donald Trump is staying home. So this is why we're at such a historic juncture. But the world is really not fragmenting. It's remaining open and it's trading. It's just that one corner of the world is very surly. The part that used to dominate just can't figure out what's going on. And Trump is, of course, trying to flex the military muscles in a disgusting way. The US is still militarily powerful, no doubt about it. The wars in Ukraine and Gaza are imperial wars. The war in Ukraine came because the United States said after the collapse of the Soviet Union, we'll move all our military bases up to the Russian border. And by the way, in 1990, when Germany was reunifying and President Gorbachev was president still of the Soviet Union, the United States promised President Gorbachev, if you, the Soviet Union, agree to the reunification of Germany, which had been divided after World War II in the Cold War, and required the Soviet approval because that was how World War II ended by treaty in 1990. The only real treaty that ended World War II was in 1990. They needed the Soviet agreement. And to get the Soviet agreement, the United States said to President Gorbachev, we promise NATO won't move 1 inch eastward. Not 1 inch. And if you want all the documentary record of that, go to a website called National Security Archive of George Washington University, and go to a website that is called What Gorbachev Heard. And you'll find 42 documents or so that say all of what I just said, that the US promised NATO would never enlarge. But as soon as the Soviet Union ended and the United States said, we're all alone in this, then they started exactly what they promised they wouldn't do, which was eastward enlargement of NATO. And that's why there's the war in Ukraine. It's a disgrace. And it is killing the Ukrainians. And it is part of the famous adage of Henry Kissinger, which you may recall, that to be an enemy of the United States is dangerous, but to be a friend is fatal. Ukraine said, we'll be a friend, and now they're dying because of that. because they said, okay, NATO enlarged. The United States said, we have your back. And probably 2 million Ukrainians have been killed or gravely wounded in this completely unnecessary and reckless war.